From Quito, Ecuador, my name is Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South, the Midnight News Brief from Telesur English, and we begin this new edition right now. For a second day, the people of Honduras are still waiting. The final results of Sunday's general elections are now expected on Thursday. The Electoral Authority says it won't announce any more numbers until the count is complete. The current president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, continues to insist that he will be the winner. But late on Monday, opposition supporters took to the streets to celebrate what they believe is their victory.
Supporters of the opposition alliance mobilized to celebrate what they believe is a victory for Salvador Nasralla. Nevertheless, they are demanding the Electoral Authority to release the final results of the voting. According to the president of the Supreme Electoral Court, Daniel Matamoros, almost 90% of the votes in Tegucigalpa and San Pedro Sula have been counted, but most of the votes from the provinces are still yet to be registered, records that should be processed this week.
If you are asking when we are updating the votes for the president, that will be when they come out of the bags and we are able to digitize them online and then process them. So there's that. We have time, and we'll most likely get all the records by Thursday at noon. They're coming from different parts of the country, and it's a process that normally takes a week to return, but we're working much quicker.
On the other hand, Salvador Nasralla, the candidate from the opposition alliance, called on the leaders of his party to defend the results that the Electoral Authority offered, which suggests an advantage over Juan Orlando Hernandez, while he also warned about possible fraud of the results against him.
At the moment, and after the report I got from an engineer, Macio Sierra, they have only registered 71% of the votes, and they're waiting to manipulate the system to change history. And in parallel, they're manifesting on the streets for what is known as Mancha Brava, to try to influence people to get violent. Luis and I are democratic leaders. We are people who want peace. And here, the Liberal Party and the Opposition Alliance Party are looking for the peace of the Honduran people and respect for the votes.
Former presidential candidate from Honduras Liberal Party, Luis Zelaya, reiterated his acknowledgement of the victory of Salvador Nasralla in the elections.
The truth is that I lost the election. The truth is that data reflects that Salvador Nasralla is the one who won this electoral process. I'm sure that it's not easy to recognize the defeat. It hurts to lose, but our country is above this. Don't call on me and expect me to not accept the results because the country is above all this.
The president of the Central Committee of the National Party, on the other hand, said that according to calculations, they've got 62 deputies in parliament, for which he was grateful for the will of the people.
We also want to use this opportunity to thank you for the strong and full support for us to continue, and for our deputy candidates. Thanks to the Honduran people. Because of your support, our calculations indicate that around 62 deputies are indeed from the great National Party of Honduras. Thank you very much.
This delay in the presentation of results not only could risk the transparency of the process, but the peace in Honduras. The lack of definition in the public proclaims of victory could end on Thursday when the Electoral Council allegedly will deliver the final results.
Let's go live now in Honduras and our correspondent, Heather Geese. So Heather, it seems like an anxious waiting in Honduras. What is the situation right now?
Yeah, it's really just a waiting game right now, Carla. This morning, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal gave a minuscule update, increasing from 57% of ballot boxes counted to 58% of ballot boxes counted. The results are the same. Nasralla still is sitting at 45%, Juan Orlando Hernandez at 40%. So there's a lot of anticipation waiting for the results, but we're really just waiting until there are official results, which is unusual because in 2013, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal did not have this fixation on waiting for all of the physical ballots and tally sheets to come in as they seem to have right now.
So has President Hernandez said anything else on this issue?
Juan Orlando Hernandez is insisting that he is the winner of this election. We don't have official results, but we do have two candidates that are claiming to be the next president of the country. And Juan Orlando Hernandez's supporters have been called to the streets today to celebrate that victory. So it's quite perplexing because the National Party seems to be referring to its own results that don't correspond to the results that we've received from the Supreme Electoral Tribunal. And although the tribunal is delaying the release of the complete official final results, one of the magistrates of that body has said that the trend of the results, the trend toward a victory for the opposition candidate Salvador Nasralla, is irreversible. So the National Party seems to be referring to its own results. Juan Orlando Hernandez himself has been quite quiet, but members of Congress of his party have said that the victory for the president is clear and overwhelming, which just simply does not correspond with the results that we've seen so far from the Supreme Electoral Tribunal.
So what have the election observers been reporting on this?
This morning, the European Union observation mission gave a report, and it highlighted that the process has been going smoothly, but they really lamented the delay and highlighted just how unusual this is. The European Union mission also pointed to how the process went in the 2013 election. And in that election, that was the first time that President Juan Orlando Hernandez was elected, and he won over the left-wing Libre Party candidate Xiomara Castro. And so the European Union mission pointed out the fact that in the time in 2013 that the Supreme Electoral Tribunal had released 5 reports on the preliminary results, this time around, we had only received 1 report. So that's a great discrepancy. And the mission also pointed out that in 2013, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal actually announced the winner with a smaller portion of the tally sheets and ballot boxes accounted for than we're sitting at right now. So the process has just gone very differently than it did in 2013. So there are some peculiarities in that sense.
Thank you very much, Heather. That was Heather Gies from Honduras. Also in election, officials in Cuba have hailed the success of municipal elections on Sunday, where more than 7 million citizens turned out to vote. Raúl Castro has announced that he will step down as president in February 2018. And Sunday's vote was the first in a chain of elections that are set to find the country's next leader. The president of the country's national electoral announced that there was an increase in female candidates elected this year.
From those elected, 35.47% were women, an increase of 0.48% from 2015. However, remember that we have a second round. In the second round, there are, of course, also women in the ballot boxes, so perhaps this percentage will increase. And young people were 14.36%, a 1% decrease compared to the previous partial electoral process.
Fidel Castro, the historic leader of the Cuban Revolution, has been honored 1 year after his death. A series of events were planned around the island all the way through December 4th. Our correspondent in Havana, Laura Prada, sent this report.
Yes, hello, nice to greet you from Havana. Indeed, several activities have been taking place these days in Cuba, not only here in Havana. These activities have been characterized by the spontaneity of all activities. The most important Cuban media, Cuba Debate, has a space where people share your story, share your tribute to Fidel, where people can share their messages, their stories about Fidel and send him a message. This 25th of November, we could see on the Telesur screen, students of Universidad of La Habana met at the stairway of this university to remember him with songs and poems. Besides this, another universities of the country also started to meet, to share and to dialogue about his legacy, his political thoughts, all things linked to his thinking. I can also tell you that in Universidad of Havana took event and a special eve this 24th of November in the faculty, the law faculty, where where Fidel himself studied, and where he said he became revolutionary. The students there lit candles, read poems, sang songs, sharing all spontaneous belief, because this year, instead of last year where people were sad because of his departure, this year people have been remembering him alive, his legacy being alive in their lives. These activities, these special activities will end in Santiago de Cuba's provinces, where the 3rd of December and a special eve will take place in Antonio Maceo's Square, and the next day in the morning, the 4th of December in the morning, people will pilgrimage from Antonio Maceo's Square to Santa Ifigenia Cemetery, where the rock, Fidel's rock, is, and they will share their tribute to him. This is all I can tell you right now from Havana, but we'll keep in contact. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Laura Prada from Havana. Haitian President Jovenel Moïse visited Venezuela on Monday to meet his counterpart Nicolás Maduro. They signed agreements for agriculture and energy development in Haiti through the Petrocaribe program. Our correspondent in Caracas, Frederick Gillingham, sent this report.
From Caracas, I can confirm that 150 successful years of diplomatic relations between Haiti and Venezuela will continue. The Haitian President Moïse met with his Venezuelan counterpart Nicolás Maduro at the Miraflores Palace, where several cooperation agreements were signed between the two nations, most notably within the agricultural and energy sectors. This is the first time that the Haitian president has visited Venezuela since he took office back in January earlier this year. Haiti, the small island of Haiti, is among several other Caribbean nations that have confirmed its commitment to Venezuela amidst growing levels of aggression from foreign powers. Haiti is an island which knows all too well about foreign powers meddling in its business. From Caracas, Venezuela, that's all we have. Back to you in the studio.
That was Frederick Gillingham, a reporter from Caracas. So we'll be coming back with more news in a minute. Stay with us. Colombia's lower house of Congress has approved key legislation to set up peace tribunals for former FARC rebels. The lower house passed the bill late on Monday, but it modified the text agreed earlier this month by the Senate, so it must now go for conciliation between the two houses. Once there is an agreement on the alterations, the bill will go to the President Juan Manuel Santos to be signed into law. The leader of the FARC, Rodrigo Londoño, a presidential candidate for next year's election, has said that any changes put to the implementation of the peace agreements are at risk. And President Juan Manuel Santos welcomed the move by Congress. He tweeted, "With this step, we'd move towards peace, transitional justice, guarantees of the rights of the victims, and we established the basis for reconciliation among Colombians." One year after the plane crash that wiped out almost the entire Chapeco football team, the Colombian town of La Unión is remembering the victims. The town has begun a series of tributes to honor the 71 victims of the plane tragedy in the city's mountains, in which Brazil Chapecoense Football Club was all but destroyed a year ago to this day. Protesters took to the street of Brasilia as public servants are rejecting a new law aimed at reforming the pension system. Our correspondent Adriana Robreño has more.
We're just in front of Congress where public servants are protesting against the pension reforms the government of Michel Temer is pushing. They have traveled from different parts of the country to Brasilia to reject this law, aimed to change the pensions and social security system, cutting the retirement budget despite the long years they have worked in the public sector. Temer's government is proposing that public servants work for 40 years before they can gain access to retirement and social security benefits. But protesters say that this reform will make them work until they die, depriving them from their right to grow old with an economic security, even though they have worked so hard to accomplish this. Despite their demands, the government is pushing for this pension reform law to be approved in Congress, as authorities have made some changes to their law proposal. But public servants say this is not enough, since the powerful sectors are the only ones that benefit from this reform.
That was Adriana Robreño from Brazil. The Mexican Finance Minister, José Antonio Meade, stepped down on Monday to seek the 2018 presidential nomination for the ruling Institutional Revolutionary Party, PRI. The party faces a challenge to hold on to power as President Enrique Peña Nieto winds down his sixth-year term amid dismal approval ratings.
I
will register as a presidential pre-candidate for the Institutional Revolutionary Party, PRI. I do this as part of my uninterrupted service to the country, with integrity and with honesty. With this experience, I hold the belief that the country has the required talent and conditions so that, with effort that benefits everyone, the country can become a force where people always have food on their table, security on the streets, health services, and shelter over their heads.
We have more details with a correspondent in Mexico City, Pablo Perez.
So, and head on to the 2018 presidential race here in Mexico. Finally, the Revolutionary Institutional Party, the party of Enrique Peña Nieto, the current president, they finally had a candidate for the next year's election. And it's a very surprising election because José Antonio Meade, that worked as the secretary of the Tax Institute here in Mexico for 2 terms, under Felipe Calderón and under Enrique Peña Nieto, does not belong to any party. He's an outsider, and he was picked because the people close to the president performed so poorly that choosing them as candidates will harm the possibilities of the party to get re-elected or to win the 2018 election, as they intend to keep control in Mexico, as they done for over 70 years before President Vicente Fox finally interrupted the predominance in Mexico. So it's all to be seen what's going to happen. We have a candidate for the left Morena party, we have a candidate for the official PRI party, and there still be to be decided who is going to be the candidate for the right-wing PAN party. And, well, that's the news for now in the institutional front, because we have also the independent candidates, and we have María de Jesús Patricio, the first indigenous candidate for the presidency, whose movement has arisen a lot of expectation here in Mexico, and it's seen not only as a possibility to get to the presidential chair, but as a different way of seeing politics here in Mexico. And there are several others independent candidates struggling to get the 800,000 signatures needed to be on the ballot. And, well, this is the news here from Mexico. We go back to you.
That was Pablo Perez from Mexico. The road to the second round of presidential elections in Chile is getting tighter. This week, the Broad Front will announce whether or not it will support Alejandro Guillier. Let's take a look at the details in the next report.
3 weeks before the second round of general elections, the possibility of the eventual support from the Broad Front to the candidacy of Alejandro Guillier is vanishing, a situation that is not happening because the Beatriz Sánchez group accuses Guillier of acting with a lack of political will. and she is calling for the people not to waste history.
I believe this historic moment for our country demands responsibility and not false pretenses. And I hope we all stand up for these circumstances. This isn't a word game. It's not a game of who's smarter. We have to understand what's at stake here. For us, health and education are rights, and we will defend those rights for the Chileans.
Statements and messages in the press are causing tension on both political sides in a crucial week. On Wednesday, November 29th, the Broad Front will define its position after internal voting and discussions.
We will define a position which is the commitment we have and other commitments we have done as well. Nobody is looking for a public position here. This isn't a negotiation of you give, I give kind of a thing. No, we're defending our position, and that will be announced on Wednesday.
Even when there's an agreement about the fact that a second government of Sebastián Piñera could be a setback for the country, the Broad Front confirmed that the responsibility to defeat the right falls only in the candidate of the center-left.
Alejandro Guiller will have the first responsibility to convince those who trusted the Broad Front in the first round. It will be up to him and his capacity to assume these ideologies and to convince those people to vote for his option in the second round. It is his responsibility and not ours.
Other aspects were already announced before the national meeting of the Broad Front. The reasons behind their program of transformation, which means there will be opposition no matter who wins in the second round.
I believe we all in the Broad Front agreed that we will be opposed to the government of Piñera or the government of Guiller. The Broad Front is a complete autonomous reference to the duopoly. It was created as an opposition to the right and the new majority.
While Sebastián Piñera continues with the accusations of intervention towards the government of Michelle Bachelet, Alejandro Guiller moves forward in his quest to gain the votes that could allow him to surpass the technical tie already announced by the criticized polls. The race to the ballot still continues.
Demonstrators are demanding justice from the government of Panama after hundreds of people were poisoned with cough syrup produced and prescribed by the country's Social Security Service in 2006. The victims' family members have protested against the 5-year sentence of those involved and have also said that many are still free. Health authorities distributed more than 200,000 bottles of cough syrup that killed around 800 patients and affected more than 1,300. Almost 250 of the victims were children. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Shepherd communities in Kenya have told Telesur about the killings of their cattle by the police. This is happening in communities north of Laikipia, where the cows graze and live. The killings have led to the community to question the political structures that exclude them.
Yemen is a Pocat from Wonyak. He denounces the killing of his cattle and the harm it's causing his community.
We don't have the power for our voices to be heard. We would like to denounce the situation to officials, but we don't have a leader, nor anyone willing to listen to us. When the police comes, all we do is remain quiet.
They also grow crops for food without supplies and protect their produce from elephants however they can. But they specialize in raising cattle. They would be lost without it. They take us to a nearby house that's been burned down by the police.
After they were done killing those cows, they came and burned down this house.
He says no one knows why. People who used to live in this house left and haven't returned since.
They left in June, but we can't say anything, because they will start taking people and finish them in the farm. It's like a massacre.
Areas around the private farms have been turned into sanctuaries for wild animals and farmers' cattle. The Pocat women complain about their living conditions.
I have nothing to say. We live in sadness. We depend on the cattle, that is all we have.
These women come here and use the small water well to wash clothes or to cook. 6 months ago, the government declared these places around the northern Laikipa farms as dangerous, which has been used as an excuse to justify interventions. When the police arrives, the women are the first victims because they can't escape. The police justifies the operation, saying it protects farm property and it fights illegal invasions. However, they don't protect Pokot families, farms, nor their right to raise cattle so their children can go to school.
Now let's look at other stories that are making headlines around the world.
Uhuru Kenyatta has been sworn in for his second term as the president of Kenya. After his inauguration in the capital, Nairobi, Kenyatta vowed to overcome the country's divisions. The ceremony was boycotted by the opposition, whose supporters were met with tear gas and water cannons by police. The president of France, Emmanuel Macron, is on a 3-day trip to West Africa, aimed at boosting cooperation in education, the digital economy and migration. However, Macron's trip has had a hostile start. On Monday, there was a grenade attack on French troops that injured 3 civilians, and a vehicle of his convoy in Burkina Faso was stoned. Also, police and demonstrators clashed during a youth protest against Macron's visit. Pope Francis avoided a diplomatic backlash by not using the highly charged term Rohingya in his address to officials in Myanmar's capital. The Pope urged the leaders of the majority Buddhist country to commit themselves to justice and human rights.
The future of Myanmar must be peace, a peace based on respect for the dignity and rights of each member of society, respect for each ethnic group and its identity.
The country's de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi spoke of her country's challenges without referencing the Rohingya crisis.
As we address long-standing issues, social, economic and political, that have eroded trust and understanding, harmony and cooperation between different communities in Rakhine, the support of our people and of good friends who only wish to see us succeed in our endeavours has been invaluable.
Ireland's scandal-hit Deputy Prime Minister Frances Fitzgerald has resigned. Her resignation has averted a government collapse and potential snap election that had threatened to complicate Brexit talks next month between Britain and the European Union. Opposition parties had demanded Fitzgerald step down after the release of new documents about her disputed handling of a police whistleblower who alleged corruption in the force.
We've come to the end of this midday news brief. This and many other news, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.